Before we begin this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. And subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday in March. I still remember the way Sarah's hands shook as she tore open the envelope from Stanford Medical School. Her eyes scanned the first line, and then she screamed, a sound of pure joy that echoed through our small apartment and made our neighbor's dog start barking. "I got in," she whispered, staring at me with tears streaming down her face. "David, I actually got in." I swept her into my arms, spinning her around in our tiny living room until we were both dizzy and laughing. This was the moment we had been working toward for 3 years. Ever since she had decided to pursue her dream of becoming a surgeon, I had supported her completely. Through the endless hours of studying for the MCAT, through the stress of applications, through every moment of doubt when she thought she wasn't good enough. "I knew you would," I said, kissing her forehead. "You're the smartest person I've ever met." Sarah pulled back slightly, her expression shifting from joy to concern. "David, the tuition is over $60,000 a year. That's not counting living expenses, books, equipment. How are we going to afford this?" I had already done the math. I'd been doing the math for months, ever since she started applying. "We'll figure it out," I said with more confidence than I felt. "This is your dream. We're not letting money stop us now." At 28 years old, I was working as a software engineer for a mid-sized tech company in San Francisco. My salary was decent, about $90,000 a year, which felt like a fortune compared to what I had grown up with. But even that wasn't enough to cover medical school tuition, rent in one of the most expensive cities in America, and all the other costs of living. That night, after Sarah had fallen asleep with the acceptance letter still clutched in her hand, I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop and a calculator. I made spreadsheets. I researched loan options. I looked at our savings account, which held about $15,000 that we had been putting away for a down payment on a house someday. By dawn, I had a plan. It wasn't a comfortable plan, but it was possible. I would take out loans in my name to cover her tuition. She would take out additional student loans for her living expenses and books. I would work extra hours, take on freelance coding projects on nights and weekends, and we would live as cheaply as possible. No vacations, no eating out, no unnecessary expenses. The house we had been saving for would have to wait. My dream of starting my own software company would have to wait. Everything would have to wait until Sarah became a doctor. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked me the next morning when I showed her the plan. "That's a lot of debt, David. What if something goes wrong?" I took her hands in mine and looked into the green eyes that I had fallen in love with 6 years earlier when we were both undergraduates at UCLA. "Nothing's going to go wrong," I promised. "You're going to become an amazing surgeon. You're going to save lives. And someday, when you're making doctor money, we'll look back on this and laugh about how broke we were." She kissed me then, soft and grateful. "I love you so much. I promise I'll make this worth it. I promise I'll make you proud." "You already make me proud," I replied. The next 4 years were the hardest of my life. Sarah threw herself into medical school with an intensity that was both admirable and exhausting to witness. She studied constantly, often sleeping only 3 or 4 hours a night. I barely saw her during exam periods, when she would lock herself in our bedroom for days at a time, emerging only for coffee and quick meals. I worked 12-hour days at my regular job, then came home to work another 4 or 5 hours on freelance projects. I built websites for small businesses, developed apps for startups, and took on any coding work I could find. The money was good, but the exhaustion was constant. There were nights when I fell asleep at my desk, my face pressed against the keyboard, only to wake up at 3 in the morning with key imprints on my cheek. Our apartment was small and run down, in a neighborhood that real estate agents politely called up and coming. The heating barely worked in winter, and the air conditioning was non-existent in summer, but it was what we could afford while paying $60,000 a year for Sarah's tuition, plus another $20,000 for her living expenses and books. I took out loan after loan, watching the debt pile up like a mountain I would spend decades climbing. By the end of her first year, I owed $200,000. By the end of her second year, it was $350,000. The numbers stopped feeling real after a while. They were just abstract figures on a screen, representing a future I tried not to think about too carefully. "We're building our future," Sarah would tell me, during the rare moments when we were both awake and in the same room. "This is an investment in us." I believed her. I had to believe her. Because the alternative, acknowledging that I might be sacrificing everything for nothing, was too terrifying to consider. During her third year of medical school, Sarah started her clinical rotations. She was working at the hospital now, actually treating patients under supervision. Her schedule became even more brutal. Some weeks she worked 80 or 90 hours, coming home so exhausted she could barely speak. I would make her dinner, listen to her talk about difficult cases or demanding attending physicians, and then watch her fall asleep on the couch before she could finish eating. "I'm sorry I'm never here," she said one night, her voice thick with guilt and fatigue. "I know this is hard on you." "It's okay," I told her, stroking her hair. "It's temporary. Once you're done with school and residency, things will get better." She nodded, already half asleep. "I promise, David, I promise I'll make this up to you." But things didn't get better. They got worse. It started with small things I didn't notice at first. Sarah began taking extra shifts at the hospital, volunteering for overnight rotations that other students avoided. She claimed she needed the experience, that she wanted to learn as much as possible before graduation. I was proud of her dedication, even as I missed her more and more. Then she started coming home smelling like cologne. Not her perfume, which I knew well. Men's cologne, a scent I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, she laughed and said the attending physicians sometimes wore too much cologne in the close quarters of the hospital. It seemed reasonable. I didn't push. Her phone behavior changed too. She started keeping it face down on the table, picking it up quickly whenever it buzzed. She took calls in the other room, speaking in low voices I couldn't quite hear. When I walked in on these conversations, she would end them quickly, claiming it was just a study partner or a colleague with a question about a case. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her, because the alternative meant that I had sacrificed 4 years of my life and $500,000 for someone who was lying to me. The truth came out on a Thursday evening in April, 3 months before her graduation. I'd finished my work early for once and decided to surprise her at the hospital with her favorite Thai food. She had mentioned she would be working late in the surgery observation area, so I headed there with takeout containers in hand. The surgery wing was quiet at 8 in the evening. Most of the elective surgeries finished for the day. I walked down the hallway, following the signs toward the observation rooms where medical students watched procedures and took notes. I was about to turn the corner when I heard voices coming from one of the empty consultation rooms. One of those voices was Sarah's. That belonged to a man. "We can't keep doing this," the man was saying. His voice was deep, confident, the voice of someone used to being in charge. "Someone's going to figure it out." "I know," Sarah replied, and there was something in her tone that made my stomach drop. Something intimate. Something that didn't belong in a conversation between colleagues. "But I can't stop thinking about you. These past 6 months have been amazing. 6 months. They had been doing whatever this was for 6 months. What about your husband?" the man asked. "The software guy who's paying for everything." Sarah laughed. Actually laughed. The sound cut through me like broken glass. "David, he's so buried in work he barely notices anything. And honestly, he's become so boring. All he does is code and sleep. You make me feel alive again." I stood frozen in the hallway, the Thai food containers growing cold in my hands. Part of me wanted to burst through that door, to confront them both. But a larger part, the part that had spent 4 years carefully planning and calculating, held me back. I needed to know more. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening. "After you graduate, we can be more open about this," the man continued. "Once you start your residency at Stanford, we'll be working together officially. No more sneaking around." Stanford. Her residency was at Stanford, one of the most prestigious surgical programs in the country, a position she had been working toward for years. "Dr. Morrison, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me," Sarah said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I can't wait to start my residency with you as my attending. Dr. Morrison, Dr. James Morrison. I knew that name. He was one of the most respected cardiac surgeons in the country, 45 years old, recently divorced and apparently sleeping with my wife. I heard movement in the room, the sound of fabric rustling. I didn't need to see what was happening to understand. I turned and walked away as quietly as I had come, the Thai food still in my hands, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing through 4 years of memories, examining them for signs I had missed. The extra shifts, the cologne, the phone calls, the growing distance between us. It had all been there, hiding in plain sight, and I had been too tired, too trusting, too focused on keeping our heads above water to see it. At home, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I pulled up our financial records, every loan statement, every tuition payment, every sacrifice I had made. $475,000. That's how much I had borrowed to put her through medical school. $475,000 of debt that would follow me for decades. All for a woman who thought I was boring and who was sleeping with her attending physician. The rage came slowly, building like a wave. Not the hot, explosive anger that makes people throw things or yell. This was something colder, more calculated. The same kind of careful thinking that had helped me build our financial plan was now turning toward a different purpose. Sarah came home at midnight, just like she had said she would. She walked in, with a bright smile, kissed me on the cheek, and asked about my day. I watched her lie with the ease of someone who had been doing it for months. She was good at it. I had trained her well, teaching her that I would believe anything she said because I trusted her completely. "How was the hospital?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Exhausting," she replied, stretching her arms over her head. "We had 3 emergency surgeries come in tonight. I was in the observation room for hours." "That sounds intense. Anyone interesting scrubbing in?" "Just the usual attendings." "Doctor Morrison led one of the cardiac cases. He's really brilliant, David. I'm so lucky I'll get to work with him during my residency." "Lucky," I repeated, testing the word in my mouth. It tasted like ash. She didn't notice anything wrong. She was too busy telling me about a complicated valve replacement, about how Dr. Morrison had handled an unexpected complication, about how much she was learning from him. Every word felt like a knife, but I kept my face neutral, nodding and making appropriate sounds. That night, lying in bed next to her while she slept peacefully, I made my decision. I wouldn't confront her yet. I wouldn't file for divorce before her graduation. I would be patient. I would be smart. And I would make sure that everything she had built, everything she had sacrificed my money and my trust to achieve, would come crashing down around her. But I would need proof first. Solid, undeniable proof of what she had been doing. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 4 years. Instead of going to the office, I drove to a small electronics store in the South Bay that I had researched the night before. The kind of place that specialized in equipment most people didn't want to think about. "I need to monitor my home security," I told the clerk, a thin man with suspicious eyes who asked no unnecessary questions. He sold me what I needed: small recording devices easily hidden, a GPS tracker no bigger than a matchbox, software that could access phone records and text messages if you knew what you were doing. And I knew what I was doing. I was a software engineer with skills that had spent 4 years funding someone else's dream. It was time to use those skills for myself. I installed the devices carefully over the next few days. One in Sarah's car, hidden under the passenger seat. One in her bag, sewn into the lining where she would never think to look. I set up the phone, monitoring software on our shared laptop, disguising it as a system update. She never questioned it. Why would she? I was boring, reliable David, who paid the bills and asked no uncomfortable questions. The evidence came quickly. Text messages between Sarah and Dr. Morrison, hundreds of them, going back 6 months just like she had said. The messages were explicit, leaving no room for doubt or alternative interpretation. They talked about hotel rooms they had been to, about secret meetings during her shifts, about their plans for after her graduation when they could be more open about their relationship. "I can't wait until I don't have to pretend anymore," Sarah had written just 2 days ago. "Lying to David is getting harder. He's so trusting, it almost makes me feel guilty." Almost. The GPS tracker showed me exactly where she went during her extra shifts. Not to the hospital, but to Dr. Morrison's apartment in Pacific Heights. Expensive. Of course it was expensive. He was a successful surgeon, not a software engineer drowning in debt. I compiled everything methodically. Screenshots of text messages, GPS logs showing her movements, photos I took from a distance when I followed her one evening, watching her enter his building and not emerge until 3 in the morning. I organized it all in encrypted folders, backed up in 3 different locations. Evidence that would hold up in divorce court and beyond. But divorce court wasn't enough. Not for what she had done. Not for 4 years of my life and $500,000 in debt. I started researching Stanford's residency program policies, their code of conduct, their rules about relationships between attending physicians and residents, especially relationships that began when one party was still a medical student under the other's supervision. The rules were clear. Relationships of that nature were considered unethical, a violation of professional boundaries. They were grounds for immediate dismissal from the residency program. I researched Dr. Morrison too. He wasn't just any cardiac surgeon. He was the director of Stanford's cardiac surgery residency program. He had built his reputation on being ethical, on maintaining the highest standards. His wife had divorced him just 8 months ago, citing infidelity. The divorce had been quiet, settled out of court, but the records were public if you knew where to look. This wasn't his first affair with someone under his supervision. His ex-wife's. Lawyer had documented at least 2 previous relationships with medical students or junior residents. The hospital had covered it up, not wanting the scandal. But if there was another incident, especially one with clear evidence, they wouldn't be able to protect him again. Sarah's graduation was scheduled for June 15th. Her residency was set to start on July 1st. I had 6 weeks to decide exactly how I wanted to destroy everything she had built, on the foundation of my money and my trust. The decision wasn't difficult. I had 4 years of exhaustion, $475,000 of debt, and a wife who thought I was too boring to notice her betrayal. She had underestimated me. They both had. I would wait until after graduation. I would let her walk across that stage and receive her medical degree, let her believe that everything was going according to her plan. Let her think she was about to start her dream residency with her lover as her supervising physician. And then I would take it all away. The night before her graduation, Sarah was almost giddy with excitement. She tried on her graduation gown 3 times, practiced her walk, called her parents to confirm their travel arrangements. I watched her, with a smile fixed on my face, playing the role of the supportive husband one last time. "I can't believe it's finally happening," she said, spinning in front of the mirror. 4 years of hell, but it was worth it." "Yes," I agreed. 4 years of hell. She didn't hear the edge in my voice. She was too caught up in her own joy, too focused on her future with Dr. Morrison, too confident that I would never discover the truth. "David," she said, turning to face me with sudden seriousness, "I know these past few years have been hard on you. All the debt, all the sacrifices you made. I want you to know I appreciate it, even if I haven't always shown it. Don't worry. I said softly. "You're about to find out exactly how much I appreciate everything too." She smiled, missing the meaning entirely, and kissed me good night. I lay awake beside her for the last time, listening to her breathe, thinking about the emails I would send tomorrow, the evidence I would deliver, the career I would end before it even began. Sarah thought she had gotten away with it. She thought she was clever, managing her affair right under my nose, using my money to fund the education that would let her start a new life with another man. She had no idea that the boring, trusting husband she had underestimated was about to teach her the most expensive lesson of her life. Tomorrow, she would graduate from medical school, and the day after that, her entire world would burn. The graduation ceremony was perfect. Sunlight streamed through the windows of Stanford's Memorial Auditorium as Sarah crossed the stage, her name echoing through the speakers. Her parents cheered from the audience. I clapped alongside them, my phone heavy in my pocket with the emails already drafted, waiting to be sent. At the reception afterward, Dr. Morrison approached us, all professional smiles and firm handshakes. "You must be David," he said, gripping my hand. "Sarah speaks so highly of you. The sacrifices you've made for her education are remarkable." "I believe in investing in the things that matter," I replied, meeting his eyes, "and making sure those investments pay off appropriately." He didn't understand. Neither did Sarah, who was glowing beside me, champagne in hand, posing for photos with her diploma. This was her moment of triumph, and I let her have it. For exactly 4 more hours. At 6 p.m., while Sarah was at dinner with her parents, I sent the emails. The first went to Stanford's residency program director, not Morrison, but his superior. The second to the medical school's ethics board. The third to the hospital's HR department. Each email contained the same attachments: time-stamped text messages, GPS logs, photos, a detailed timeline of Sarah and Morrison's 6-month affair. I included Morrison's history, his ex-wife's divorce filing, the pattern of predatory behavior with students under his supervision. I made it impossible to ignore, impossible to cover up. By 8 p.m., my phone started ringing. Sarah's number. I didn't answer. She called 17 times before finally coming home at 10 p.m., her face pale, mascara streaked from crying. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I documented the truth," I said calmly. "Your affair with your attending physician. The affair you conducted while I paid for your education. The unethical relationship that violates every professional boundary Stanford has. David, please, your residency position has been revoked. Morrison has been suspended pending investigation. The medical board is reviewing whether your degree should be granted, given the ethical violations during your clinical rotations." She collapsed onto the couch, her body shaking. "You've destroyed everything. 4 years of work, 4 years of my work," I corrected. "My money, my sacrifice. For someone who thought I was too boring to notice she was sleeping with her supervisor, the divorce papers were filed the next morning. California's community property laws meant Sarah was responsible for half the debt, $237,000. She had her medical degree, but no residency, no job, and a scandal that would follow her career forever. Morrison lost his position as residency director and faced his own professional review. I sold our apartment, paid down what I could of the debt, and moved to Seattle for a fresh start. The remaining loans would take years to repay, but they were mine alone now. 6 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Sarah was working as a medical consultant for an insurance company, reviewing claims. Not practicing medicine, not saving lives. Just reading files in a cubicle, her surgical dreams dead. She had underestimated the boring software engineer who paid her bills. That mistake cost her everything she'd worked for. Some investments, I learned, should never be made.